was 2009 when my mum passed away. Her death was severely traumatic, to say the least. And in the last couple of days, she didn't know who we were. Our aunts and uncles left us to organise the funeral on our own. And this was the beginning of the end. The final straw was when they did some dishonest things with us financially and left my 16-year-old brother and myself on our own on our first Christmas away from our mum. They had booked a trip to New York for Christmas after our mother's death. We had nowhere to go on our first Christmas away from our mum. I eventually sent them an email outlining why I was upset, thinking in my naivety that we could talk it through. I thought that because we were family, that's what would happen. However, I received an email back saying that they were upset with my email and that they wished myself and my 16-year-old brother well, but they could no longer be part of our future. So less than a year after my mother's death and 3 weeks before her 1-year anniversary of dying, we had no one that was family to be there for us. We had friends and we had family friends, but ultimately we felt abandoned. Without any family there and without a mum, I don't want to talk for my brother, but I felt lost, I felt alone, and I felt that there was no one out there who loved me or cared for me, and that the world was a very selfish place where no one really cared about you. I felt that I was running from the doom of being in a vulnerable position again, and I was hell-bent on trying to survive. I decided I was never going to allow myself to be vulnerable again. I came to the conclusion from that experience with my mum's sister that if I was vulnerable, people would harm us. What turned the tide was a random meeting in the law library. After several times seeing each other and having small talk, this African man I kept seeing in the law library asked if I had Facebook, which led us to having lunch, and eventually he invited me to church. This man is Tinashe. I then ran into Jen Lee, who I briefly met at church, and again randomly outside the swimming pool, when she invited me to a movie with her friend, Stuart, and then she invited me to her life group. I was received very warmly by everyone at Elevate 4, despite being very nervous, as I was the only non-Asian in the life group. I remembered when I went there being very nervous about going into Eddie and Yvonne's place. And Chi Wong, who was part of the life group then, made me feel very welcome when I turned up at her life group. Then Taeshong took me under his wing and mentored me. For the first time, I felt a sense of belonging and that people cared, and the unconditional support helped me to find Christ in my own time. Later, I met a family member who I didn't know but knew my mum, who offered to almost be an aunt to me. Her name is Marilyn Monsell. And eventually, I found a great psychologist, Dr. Frank Welsh, who helped me to process the traumatic experience as the trauma continued to plague me. Through the lens of God, I was able to see this experience as an important gift. These experiences had created a deep empathy for disadvantaged and vulnerable children who had no parents or whose parents weren't adequately protecting and looking after their children. These experiences also gave me a rich source of information to use for when I finished my studies as a psychologist to create interventions for them that will hopefully give these disadvantaged children a path out of their misery and a path to their greatest potentials. Through experiencing it myself, I'd be better placed to create interventions that will cater for disadvantaged children who were left out to dry by the people who should have been there and cared for them. I didn't ask for my mum to die or for her family to be so harsh on us. I also didn't ask to meet Tinashe, meet Jen Lee, meet Chi, meet Pei Shong, meet Marilyn Monsell, or meet Frank Welsh. The meeting of these people were almost coincidental, and if you didn't believe in God, completely by luck. But I did realise that every experience I had, the good and the bad, held the seeds of an important lesson that would ultimately help me realise my path and purpose in life. I now was left with a huge motivation to look after the children who weren't looked after. So if there's anything I can give to you today from this testimony, it's that every experience of life, good and bad, can hold an important lesson that awakens us to the purpose that God has for us. Thank you.